I'll share everything on
Here's our
Facebook when
Jackie.
I'm done.
Do we have Pastor
What
Tisha?
color are you painting it? Excuse me?
No, I'm sorry. Hold on one moment. Paul, do we have Pastor Williams up?
Says there's comfort.
What color?
Over
That you're painting?
rescued, but there are still dozens missing.
Black
Really Thursday morning.
and white. Oh, black. Interesting. Okay.
To search and rescue.
Yes, I already built the benches and painted them and
A woman's leg
did the cushions for the high deck. I'm just working on the low deck now.
Ophie Osen Cohen lives
Wow.
in the building.
I mean, you are so
Today show
industrious.
she heard a loud noise, smelled
Thank you.
smoke, and tried to run for
Yeah,
it.
wow, that's so cool.
Hold on one moment, ladies. Do we have Pastor Williams up?
We do.
Okay, thank you. Let's bring her up. Thanks so much.
Covering the door next to us.
Okay.
Rescuers say
Okay,
they
you
haven't
all
heard
can
any
say hello to
voices in the
Pastor
rubble,
Williams,
but
and I'm
they
going to let
have
you
heard
guys go.
banging
Thank you
noises
so
even outside
much.
their building.
Good morning, Reverend. How you doing?
Collapse.
I'm well. How are
Sentencing
you
today for
today?
former Minneapolis police officer.
Oh,
Derek
doing all
Chauvin,
right. Just glad it's a
of murder in
Friday.
George Floyd's death.
That's
Several
right.
experts
Good morning.
think the judge will give him
Okay.
20 to
Have a great show.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
federal civil
Bye.
rights.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Vice
Thank you
President Mike
all.
Pence says the idea of overturning
Pastor Williams, how
election
you
results
doing?
is un-American. He spoke at
I'm
the
well.
Ronald Reagan
How are
Library
you
last week.
today?
Ooh, I'm doing well. Thank you. Let me say hello to everybody here. Hey, King, you said hello, world, some minutes ago. Thank you for getting on so early. Andre and Linda and Maddie, everybody like and share, okay? Like and share, like and share. And Zenobia, Raphael, how you doing, sweetie? You know, it's very interesting when I look at, I've been reading a lot of different stories about what happened at this building. Can you bring that down? Now it's louder, Paul.
Giuliani calls it a disgrace. He said it's
Paul,
louder?
yeah. Now it's at the level that I'd like to hear it.
A good deal of hold on, let me try something here. Just let me know if you notice a difference here.
Okay.
Infuriated by all this, Giuliani's son Andrew says it's all about politics.
This is going after one of President Trump's.
How about now?
It's much lower.
Okay, so I can control your headphone volume. You're plugged into the board here. So let me put you back, and then we'll make an adjustment. Okay.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Economists think this could be the strongest year in
You know, Pastor Williams, that building has not been certified since 1981 when it was built. That's 40 years ago.
Wow.
And a USA Today article established that they did a study of the building and it was deemed unstable. So as they're talking about, oh my goodness, this is, how did this happen? They're being so disingenuous. The information is out there.
Right.
The information is out there. I mean, and this is what, just burns me up. I'm like, wait a minute, this information is right here. I'm finding it.
Yeah. Right. That's unfortunate.
Oh, girl, this is horrible. And that, because Miami, particularly, well, that part of Florida is, is really the gateway to South America. So you have a lot of wealthy people from the southern part of this hemisphere. They have second homes there. They come here for medical treatments, all of that.
Right.
Because my friend, bless his heart, he has a home down there. So, I mean, he's down there half the year, roughly half the year. And so I know Surfside. I know it. And I'm like, because I even know the building. I was like, whoa, I was so shocked.
But the amount of lives lost, my goodness.
Oh, girl, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's horrible. It's horrible. Horrible.
Terrible.
And these people just greedy. Just greedy. They know that they know what happened with that building. They know it was unstable and they were doing roof repairs. So, with the weight on that building, which, makes me think about my own, because we have lots of issues in this building. Beautiful building, but lots of issues. Lots.
Wow.
So I thought about that and I said, you guys gotta be kidding me. You know exactly what's going on here.
Right.
Greedy gooses. They know exactly they know what's happening. They know it.
Right.
That building was unstable. Nothing just collapses. They said it had been sinking for years.
30.
Just people are they're awful. Oh, just awful. So I'm
15.
glad to be with you all today.
So glad
And
to
let's
be
have,
here.
it's a blessing. So let's have a great show. Can't wait to get your message today.
5.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be on today. As
Always,
always. That's
always.
nothing new.
Change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Friday, June 25th, 2021. I'm coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station here in Chicago, and it has been thunderstorming all morning. Oh, my gosh. Well, at least the farmers should be very happy, right? And, of course, the AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Got to watch out. We're going to see how they're going to sentence Derek Chauvin today up there in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Going to be keeping a lookout for that. Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. You can text me at that number because of the generosity of GWC Injury Lawyers, 773-763-9278. Streaming live with all my Facebook family, and our home family, of course. The Santita Jackson Morning Stars, and of course we're streaming over on WCPT. Everybody, like and share, like and share. We are streaming, and I want you to meet me over on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show channel, as well. Got a lot to talk about today. We are going to bring back to you our Reverend Pastor Charles Strait and Pastor Vicki Johnson as we wrap up Pride Week here at WCPT in the midst of Pride Month, as we look at blacks in the LGBT community, blacks who are in the LGBT community. Indeed, there are studies that have shown that the blacks in the LGBT community, actually, they attend church more frequently and they're more religious than white members of the LGBT community. So that makes it's a very, very interesting mix when you dig down and really try to understand what's happening with our brothers and sisters in different spaces. And we will also be talking about Governor DeSantis in Florida, who wants to do a survey, really interview every student and professor at all the public colleges and universities in Florida to find out what their political beliefs are. Okay? And he is defunding institutions that he feels are too liberal. Think about that, everybody. Sounds a little bit or a lot like fascism. And then we're going to have one of our favorites here. Yes, Chaparral Wells. Mrs. Chaparral Wells has one of the most listened to podcasts in the world today. More than 1.5 million downloads. The Somebody podcast. They have been nominated for and they've won many, many different awards around the world. And we're going to be talking with her about it because she's going to be on Dateline tonight. That's right, Dateline on NBC. And we want to know really what her journey has been about and what's going to happen on Dateline. This story is something that a lot of people are interested in all over the country and indeed all over the world. So congratulations to Chaparral. I'm going to have her and Allison Flowers from the Invisible Institute on to talk about that. So let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. In Chicago, it thunderstorms, everybody. 80 degrees will be the high today. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 88 degrees, partly cloudy. The Dow closed up 322 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 97 points. The S&P 500 closed up 24 points. The Twins, well, they fell to Cleveland yesterday, 4-1. And the Cubs shut out the Dodgers. Wow, they're having a lot of shutouts, right? 4-0. They're going to be playing the Dodgers again today. The White Sox will be facing off against the Mariners and the Clippers. Well, they were triumphant over the Suns, 106 to 92. Everyone is looking at what happened at Surfside. At Surfside, the partial collapse of this residential building just outside of Miami has left 99 people unaccounted for, one confirmed dead. Indeed, the sister-in-law of the president of Paraguay and her family. They're looking for her, her husband, and her three children. A lot of people. What happened, everybody? People want to know what happened. Well, I tell you, I was doing some digging. You know, there's a USA Today article that said that the building has been unstable, that it has not been certified since 1981 when it was built, everybody. That's right. The Miami building that collapsed, and this is from a Daily Mail report, collapsed on Thursday morning, killing at least one person and leaving 99, missing at least 99. USA Today reported last year that Shimon Dowinski, a professor at the Department of Earth and Environment at Florida International University, did a study on the building and found it to be unstable. He said on Thursday that he knew instantly which building had collapsed when he heard news reports of it. I looked at it this morning, he said, and I said, oh my God, we did detect that. Close quote. His study was part of a wider look at how buildings in Miami were sinking generally with rising sea levels caused by climate change. Champlain Tower South, that is the name of this building, that complex, was completed in 1981, but hasn't been updated significantly since then. There are 136 condos, and they were doing roof repairs. Some are speculating were the roof repairs too much pressure for the building. In the meantime, President Biden has endorsed the Senate's bipartisan infrastructure. Progressives want to know if he's going to pull together another bill that they can put into reconciliation where they will not need Republican support because this falls far short of the $4 billion that he was requesting. This is $925 billion, but at least we're going to be getting things moving, everybody. Derek Chauvin, the ex-police officer, who was a police officer at the time, everybody, who murdered George Floyd, will be sentenced today. He could get up to 40 years in prison. People do not expect him to get that much time. We're going to see, and of course, we'll be talking about it on Monday on the Santita Jackson Show. The Emperor of Japan is now voicing concern about the COVID spread during the Olympics. Emperor Naruhito, who ascended the chrysanthemum throne after his father, Emperor Akihito, abdicated, said he shared widespread public concern about the games, which will open in a month's time. The emperor is extremely worried, his spokesman said, about the current status of coronavirus infections. Everybody remember, the Japanese people are under 10% vaccinated. You know, we say that we love our troops and we love the military who serve us, but do we really? National Guard and Reserve soldiers are having trouble feeding their families due to a year of record deployments. Hunger among Guard members and reservists is more than double the national rate. Let me say that again. Hunger among National Guard members and reservists is more than double the national rate, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Data from mid April through early June. They report more food insecurity than nearly any other group, regardless of household income, education, age, or race. Nearly 1 in 5 Guard members report sometimes or often not having enough to eat. And a third of those with a spouse serving in the National Guard or Reserves report not having enough to eat. The numbers are even more troubling for the National Guard and Reserve families with children. Wow. How can that be? While the top 1% of Americans have about 16 times more wealth than the bottom percent, which is a report coming from CNBC, everybody. Wow. But in the meantime, maybe we need to look at what's happening in France. Workers in France seized a McDonald's restaurant and turned it into a food bank. That's right, the McDonald's restaurant in the 14th district in the southern French city of Marseille has been closed for more than a year, yet it has rarely been busier, according to this Washington Post report. Um, the workers seized the McDonald's. They said it's no longer a McDonald's. It is now a food bank. You gotta love it. And the National Guard just simulated a cyber attack that brought down utilities nationwide. What might they know that we do not? And finally, Pfizer has halted distribution of an anti-smoking drug after, get this, everybody, finding carcinogens in the drug. You can't make this stuff up, Pastor Tisha Williams, but I know you're going to give us some good news today. Just go, my gosh. You take an anti-smoking drug, they've got carcinogens in it.
I've never heard anything more ironic or oxymoron.
Or just moronic. But
It was just moronic, correct. Or just moronic. Thank you for having me today, Santita. It's always good to be on your show. Good morning, everyone.
let's see.
Today, I want to encourage you from this thought. Take it to the bridge. On Friday mornings, I love to play DJ sometimes. So today, we're taking it to the bridge. I'm coming from Psalm 55, verse 16, and David says, "But I will call on God, and the Lord will rescue me. Morning, noon, and night I cry out in my distress, and the Lord hears my voice." In this text, David is battling with the pain of relationships gone south, not with a woman for a change, but rather with his son Absalom and a trusted friend and advisor. And we feel David's fear and anxiety over the situation as he wrestles with thoughts and feelings of confusion, distress, anger, and anguish over the conflict with his enemies and the subsequent betrayal of a friend. And while he's beseeching God, we can't ignore all that David talked out, worked out, and hashed out before he finally let go. And he demonstrates here for us the painstaking steps we also go through before we let go of our negative thoughts or situations. And letting go is a process. It's true. It's a process that the first thing you have to do is to let go of poor counsel. Second thing, you have to let go of your thoughts. The third thing you have to do is let go of your feelings. And this is critical because we learned that our thoughts directly impact our feelings, and our feelings impact our behaviors. It's called the cognitive behavior therapy cycle. The thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all linked. So if you think upsetting thoughts, then you'll feel upset. And then you're likely to do something that will increase the upsetting thoughts and strengthen the feelings, a vicious cycle. But you know what? I'm grateful today. I'm grateful today that feelings are not facts. Here we see a spiritually mature David, a clean-hearted David who has learned that feelings are just feelings. You don't have to act on them. One more time, feelings are just feelings. You don't have to act on them. And I can hear someone saying, "But Pastor Tish, what do I do when I'm in my feelings? What do I do when I'm plagued by these thoughts?" It's simple. You take it to the bridge. As for me, I called to God and the Lord saved me. This 16th verse of this song represents the bridge of the song. And the bridge is the best part of any song. I checked in with one of my producer friends, shout out to T.L. Cross for his help, and he confirmed the following for me. He said, "Tish, there are several parts of the song. There's the introduction, which invites the listener in, just as David invites God to hear his plea. Then there's the first verse, which sets up the song. It sets up the idea and the concept of the song. For David, it's "My thoughts trouble me." And then there's the chorus, the most repetitive part of the song, or the part of the song that you hear most. It's usually the part that gets stuck in your head. In this case, I believe it's David's constant reference to his enemy that serves as a chorus over and over again. And then there's the second verse, which expands upon the concept and takes it to new heights when he says, "My heart is in anguish with me." But somebody say today, type it in the comments, take it to the bridge. The bridge literally bridges the body of the song to the ending of the song, or the finale. Typically, songs are structured first verse, chorus, second verse, chorus, and by this point, the person should be fully engaged and understand what the song is about. And now that the foundation of the song has been laid, it's time for the bridge. It is the climax, the apex of the song. It's the biggest moment of the song. All lyrics, music, movements have led to this moment. The bridge brings the song to its highest point. Let me help you. Aretha Franklin, who we honor, her life and her legacy, sang not only one of the greatest songs of all time, but one of the greatest bridges of all time. Come on, y'all. You know the song, Respect. Now, you may not know the first verse. You may not know what she's got or what he needs, but baby, when that bridge comes, you sure enough know, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, found out what it means to me. You know that part. When that bridge comes in, we all become script spelling bee champs. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. It doesn't matter what came before that part. All that matters is the respect and the bridge. Every component of the song either sets up or plays off the bridge. The bridge of the song shifts the whole song. Why do I say this? Because here in verse 16, we experience the shift. Everything before this bridge was doom and gloom, betrayal, suffering, worry, depression, anxiety, troubling thoughts, anguish, and suicidal thoughts. But when David says, "As for me, I call on God, I felt the shift. The whole tone of the song changes because when you call on God, your situation has got to change. Up until this point, it was distress and anguish, but now he declares, as for me, I call on God. David realizes he can't do this in his own power. It's time to call on God. Somebody out there, it's time to take it to the bridge. Santita, I learned that when Frankie Beverly wrote Before I Let Go, it was intended to be a sad ballad. But when Mays got a hold of the song, they took it and put their production spin on the song. They saw a potential for the song that Frankie Beverly could not see. Mays took something birthed from misery and made it a dance tune. And that's what God is doing for all of you today. God wants to do that for you today because I'm told God will turn your mourning into dancing. God takes your melancholy, your pain, your issues, your problems, your blues, remixes it and produces a hit. Can I prove it to you? God will put some acoustics on your anxiety. He'll make a club mix out of your catastrophe. He'll fade out your fears and master mixes your melancholy. He dubs your depression and remasters your mistakes and puts some reverb on your reality. Come on, y'all. It's time to take it to the bridge. By the time God finishes with it, you got a dance hit. Somebody say, that's my jam. So I don't know where you are in this song we call life, but wherever you are, I'm encouraging you today to take it to the bridge. And that's the good news.
Amen, girl. Ooh, Pastor, I needed that today. And you've got Meddy dancing in the street. I think she might leave the Catholic Church to join yours. We love it. We love it. We love it. And she said, oh, I just love her preaching. She's dancing right now. Meddy, well, you know what? There you go. Janae, everybody dancing, dancing, dancing. You know, let me ask you a question. Because, you know, we're going to have Pastor Charles Strait, um, brilliant religious leader who's been here, who I've known all of my life. Pastor Vicki Johnson, uh, brilliant religious leader, also one of the great singers. I grew up watching her as a child. She was a teenager singing in the Push Choir, but just a renowned soloist. We're going to be talking about blacks in the church, in the LGBT community, and you know the challenges they're in. And you know, and I was, you know, I had to do some digging, you know me, and you know, I came across these interesting headlines. Black churches may be more friend than foe. You know, because the rap on black churches is that black churches reject um, the gay community. I said that it's a little bit more complex than that. I said because that's not what we do. I'm not going to call out anybody's names. We know who they are, because you know if you have not disclosed yourself publicly, I don't do that. I don't do that. And quite frankly, I just don't believe in it. You're being hypocritical and you're hurting people. Well, even then, I just, you know, God, you know, you got to leave room for God to take care of some things. But there's a study by the Williams Institute at the University of California at UCLA that found that black, gay, and bisexual Americans are not only more religious than their white counterparts, but they also quite possibly are more religious than Americans as a whole. They are more likely to attend religious services, engage in prayer, and to self-identify with a religious affiliation than are white gay Americans. And more interestingly, this study found that they are less likely to be deterred by non-affirming congregations. So even if the congregation rejects them, they keep on going. Are you surprised by that? I mean, you're a pastor. What have you seen?
I am not surprised by that at all. It's interesting. I was engaged in a panel discussion on this very subject last night, and we had a few people from the LGBTQ plus community on the line, and so many of them expressed not necessarily their love for the church, but their love for God. And it is the love for God that keeps them going to church and serving as the best that they can in spiritual or religious spaces that not necessarily affirm them, but at least accept them. And I think that's the issue, is they may be accepted and they may be allowed to worship and to serve, but what they're looking for is someone to publicly affirm them in these spaces as well. It was just a very great conversation. in that we talked about even that damaging phrase that we say, love the sin or hate the sin.
Mm-hmm.
And while most people think that they're saying something that is affirming and encouraging, that's probably the worst thing that you could say to someone. It is not affirming. It is not loving. It is not kind. And I think we oftentimes don't know what to say to people. I'm of the mind that there are things that we put on God, or thoughts and words that we put in God's mouth that God in Jesus never said. And what would truly offend God, I think, surprises us. And if we were really reading our Bibles, we would understand what truly offends Jesus. And there are things that he never said anything about. I tend to go with, if he didn't say anything about it, neither will I.
How about that?
Um,
Well, no, but
yeah,
so
yeah.
how do we deal with that? I mean, because we're in a moment, you know, the zeitgeist is speaking to us, and it's calling for us not just to change, because change is neutral. It's asking us to, really commanding and demanding of us that we elevate, that we become who we're supposed to be.
Mhm.
And I'm just trying to
And I
figure out how, you know, how do we do this? How do we, because we have, there are so many people we've been unkind to. My father was born out of wedlock,
Mhm.
and um and he was a product of an affair. And they
Mhm.
marched my father, and my grandmother had to go. She was a leading church soloist. She had a full scholarship to Talladega down in Alabama. She had to relinquish that because she decided to have him. She had to go to the front of the congregation and apologize with him in her arms, and they walked her out the middle. And they did the same thing for um, my grandfather. I mean, he was a deacon, big guy in town. And that's something that I know my father's never gotten over. And he did, you know, he was a newborn. It's, you know, never, and my grandmother never got over that. She found another church and kept on going. But, you
Mhm.
know, we shame people. And I'm not saying that you
Mhm.
do things that when you do things that are wrong, that you should not uh, be dealt with. But in this last 30 seconds, please help me with how we treat people.
There is no doubt. C. Everett Koop, the former Surgeon General at
Mm.
one time, said that his experience with black ministers was some of the most, he experienced black ministers as some of the most uncompassionate and moralizing people he had ever encountered.
Mm.
I'm reminded of Peter. Peter once went and preached to a group of people, and they received
30.
the Holy Spirit. When he
When
gets
you
back
know,
to the leaders,
I want you to hold that thought because I'm going to have you bring on everybody in this upcoming segment because I don't want people to miss that. I don't want you to rush through that because I think, you know, everybody, you know me on this show, I'm really trying to elevate. I want us to leave, including myself, better than how we came on the air every day. I love everybody. Stay right here. Back in just a minute with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Blacks in the LGBTQ community, blacks or gay, or in the church. Back in a minute.
Take the time to say a prayer.
Yeah, I want you to I want you to be able to speak to that. Okay, Pastor Williams. Okay, Paul, I can't speak with Pastor Williams.
Try her again, please.
Okay, Pastor Williams.
yes, I'm here.
Yes, I didn't want to cut you off. I wanted you to be able to
No
say
problem.
what you were
That's
going to say. Because, you know, when I read that, I said, you know, and but you know, also different. There are different folkways and mores and cultures that are driving different members of the American and world family. You know, because people have been more liberal than Black people have been, and I think that's been to the detriment of people because anything does not go. But unkindness should not be the norm either. We shouldn't normalize that. That should not be the base. So it's
It should be the baseline. And you know what's so interesting? We do a random acts of kindness. We have a random acts of kindness initiative here at my church,
hmm,
and we literally go out into the community and surprise people and do random kind things.
hmm.
What the surprised me with how much people are they are actually like, why are you doing this? What is this? They're so skeptical and just afraid and averse to it. And that's so sad, where it's become the norm that people are used to disrespect as opposed to kindness.
Well,
and it should so be the opposite.
But our policies, if you look at what we've done to the indigenous people, we found up in Canada, they found 751 more children buried at one residential school. Now, we had 251 a week and a half ago, but there are 10,000 of them that went missing in that period that they were trying to Europeanize these First Nation children. Okay?
Right.
So you talk about cruel. Who could do that?
Right.
I mean, and these were church schools. These were Catholic church schools. I'm not slamming the Catholic Church anybody. I'm saying because look, we all fall short of the glory of God, and including our churches because they were made by human hands.
We have Reverend Straight on the line.
Divine inspiration, but human hands. So and human thoughts. A lot of our stuff is, we filter God's word through our experiences, our thoughts, and me. But Pastor Charles Strait, how are you this morning? I know it's early.
I am good considering how early it is.
I know it's early, so just be hush. You know my show's early.
Yes, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
I'm not even thinking about him. Now, I've known him, Pastor Williams, since I was a child. I love him so much. And
we have Reverend Johnson on the line.
And I've known Pastor Johnson since I was a child. And I want to welcome you both back to the show. We have our sound together today. But I wanted you to meet Pastor Tisha Williams. She is a pastor out of Bridgehampton, New York. And she's a preaching somebody, Pastor Vicky and Pastor Charles.
She is. I hear her. I hear her good news, and I just want to sit in her congregation.
Well, and Pastor Vicky is a preaching and singing somebody. So there you go.
Oh, yeah.
And Pastor Straight is the same, and he is they're all just so gifted and so blessed. So stay right here because I wanted to have her give us a word before we begin.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, Friday, June 25th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about Blacks who are gay, who are in the church. Blacks who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, SGL communities. Just how do they navigate that space? We had a wonderful conversation yesterday with Pastor Charles Strait, who came to me and said, I really want us to talk about this. And I've known him practically all of my life. Brilliant pastor and servant in the church before he became a pastor. And he's a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and he's a father of 5 children, and just a capital human being, someone who's been at the forefront of activism for those who have AIDS and HIV. And he's been doing that for more than 40 years. And his partner in that has been Pastor Vicky Johnson. That's right, who gives us the good news every week. One of the great singers and pastor preachers of our day. And of course, she's here at the St. Thomas Lutheran Church here in Chicago. But I wanted you all, before we begin, Pastor Tisha Williams from the First Baptist Church in Bridgehampton, New York, was speaking to us, and I thought she'd be a wonderful bridge because I asked her about how we are to grow with respect to our understanding of how we deal with everybody and how we embrace everybody in our church. starting with the LGBTQ plus community, really with everybody. Pastor Williams, you were saying on the other side of the break?
Yeah, I was saying that what happens sometimes in churches, we become legalists and we want to impose on people that which Christ has never imposed on us. We often misinterpret, or you've heard it said, the Bible says, come as you are. The Bible does not say, come as you are. But however, that is a wonderful and warm invitation, right? But what Jesus does say is, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, cast your cares, I will give you rest. And so what he was talking about was relieving us of the burdens of the legalists of the day. I'm reminded of when Peter went to preach and ended up speaking to a group of people that received the Holy Spirit. When he gets back to the legalists of the day, how could you do that? They haven't been circumcised. And we often impose on people that which we have not had, a pain that we don't even remember experiencing. What do I mean? They were asking people to be circumcised, something they had done at 8 years old. They were asking them to do at 80. And that's often what we do with people. We impose a pain and a burden on them that we could not endure ourselves. And that's unfortunate. And it's in the LGBTQ plus community, and it's in so many other ways that we ostracize people in the church and make them feel unwanted. The interesting thing, there's a book titled Their Own Receive Them Not, African American Lesbians, Gays in the Black Church by Horace Griffin. And one of the things that he states in the book is for most the LGBTQ, why they stay in the Black church is because for many, the risk of encountering racism by a group of strangers is not worth leaving the familiar, albeit homophobic, the Black church worship experience. And so that is very telling, that you would almost rather stay in an abusive relationship than take the risk of experiencing something new.
Pastor Charles Strait. I just felt that it was important that she say that. Because I think it's important for us to know that I think it's important for you to know that you have allies, brothers and sisters. I mean, this is where we are, and I want to pick up on our conversation yesterday because Pastor Strait and Pastor Johnson. I shared with Pastor Williams on the other side of the break that there's a study from the Williams Institute at UCLA. It came out almost 10 years ago in 2012 that showed that Black, gay, and bisexual Americans are not only more religious than their white counterparts, they're more religious than Americans as a whole. They are more likely to attend religious services, engage in prayer, to self-identify with a religious affiliation than white gay Americans. And more interestingly, moreover, this study also found that Black gay Americans are less likely to be deterred by a non-affirming congregation, a person who rejects that part of them, which is who you are. Are you surprised by that, Pastor Strait?
Not really, because what I found is that culture in which so many of us grew up is so important that it allows us to continue in this don't ask, don't tell behavior that allowed us to be used in the church, allowed us to have such low self-esteem that many times we don't even think that we're worthy of being able to celebrate who we are in a Christian environment. Those roots that have taken hold in us causes us to stay in the closet and to continue to live in spaces that is mentally and spiritually detrimental to us. Sexuality and spirituality are two things that go hand in hand, and I'm not surprised by the idea LGBT persons in the Black community are more spiritual than their white counterparts. I mean, look at we're not exempt from the struggles of our culture, of our people, of our race. And so therefore, it isn't to me at all that we need a faith to hold on to get us through the trials and tribulations of life, which includes our own sexual identity. And so having a faith that gives you a chance to become more than just tolerated, but celebrate it is something that I'm really not surprised that folk are not holding on, are not trying to find. And like you said, Pastor Williams, the idea that moving to spaces that are usually whiter than we would like them to be, and even foreign to us in the way that we worship. We love gospel music. We love the soul that comes from our rhythmic experiences, both in and out of church. And to go to a place where people don't have that, many times it's as disturbing or as difficult as being in a church where you're a second-class citizen.
What was it like to navigate, your way through the church when at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic? I mean, did you feel that you could disclose, that people feel that they could disclose their status? I'm HIV positive. I have full-blown AIDS. Or did you keep that to yourself?
So it was really easy, I think, for many people, particularly in our church. I grew up at the Fellowship Baptist Church, in the Fellowship Baptist Church in Chicago, and we were the first Black church in the city of Chicago to have an AIDS ministry. And so if you were HIV positive in fellowship, you were asked or you were encouraged to talk about your status, because that was the way to get help. And once people really realized that this was not a witch hunt, this was not going to condemn them, that they needed help, and that there was no place better than church to get that help, they were really willing to come forward and talk about their HIV status. And don't forget that it was almost impossible to hide it. People were sick. They were, they were frail, emaciated. They had all kinds of conditions that made it kind of difficult for you to hide. You could go away, but again, you lost that connection to community if you stayed home, if you just disappeared from church. And we were the kind of church actually where you really couldn't disappear because somebody would check on you if you were missing. But the fact that we created an environment, I'll never forget, Reverend Evans would frequently have altar calls, at least every World AIDS Day, have an altar call, which people were invited to come down and be prayed for. I never forget an experience where he taught me such humility at Cook County Hospital. Well, at that time, Cook County, before it was Stroger. And we went to see members of our church who were there on the AIDS unit at Cook County because they requested a visit from their pastor. And he went and prayed for them and laid hands on them, which I didn't really understand how unique that was at the time. But this idea that you are not discriminated against because of your HIV status, which also linked to your sexual orientation, because you couldn't deal with HIV without dealing with sexual orientation, because LGBT persons were the ones who were getting infected at the time.
Pastor Vicki John,
that was not the case. Yeah, that was not the case in all churches. Fellowship was unique at that time, because at other churches, they would say when the person was ill or a mother's son was ill, they would say that they had cancer and that they were deteriorating from cancer, because cancer was more respectable than HIV, than AIDS. And so they hid under that mask until they could not hide any longer. Because if the missionaries decided they were going to visit that person in the hospital, they had AIDS units in hospitals. And I can remember going to Cook County, to Stroger, to visit one of our members, and I was pregnant with my youngest son at the time. And when I went in and visited with him and I hugged the patient, a nurse, as I walked out, she grabbed me and reprimanded me like She was my grandmother. She said, you can't be hugging those people. We don't know all about this disease. You carry a new life. You're exposing your baby. Well, she didn't know that I had been educated to know that hugging, you cannot contract the virus by hugging. It's not airborne. And so I felt some kind of way with that. But everybody was not and still are not accepting of an HIV diagnosis and would rather play it off as cancer.
Pastor Straight, that seemed to hit you some kind of way.
Yeah, because in 2021, we are still living in that shadow of unacceptance. So we have more young LGBT men rejected by their families than any other group in our African American community. And this is true about everything that has anything to do with HIV. We have more infection, new infection in our community than any other. We have more people dying still of AIDS because they have not sought treatment. It's easy to get into care and to get medication that will save your life. But when you are constantly stigmatized, when you're constantly told that there's something wrong with you for having this disease, seeking treatment is something that you don't do. We have more people who go from HIV, which is a disease that you can live with. I've been HIV positive now for almost 40 years, and you can live a full life with HIV, but we have more people progressing on to AIDS because they're not in care than any other group. And it all boils down to this issue of homophobia, of stigma that continues to be palpable within our community, and especially within the church. It wasn't too long ago that Reverend Johnson and I were looking at a video that surfaced on YouTube with some prominent pastors in Chicago referring to LGBT persons as what was the term that they used, Reverend Johnson? I can't remember, but in a very negative, stereotypical way, and talking about how the church has to purge itself of these people by preaching the gospel. Perversion, that was what they used as the term for talking about LGBT persons, and talking about how it was the pastor's fault for having not preached the gospel that would turn people around and change their behaviors. And it's this kind of attitude that persists in our churches, and I think in large part because we refuse to educate ourselves, we refuse to believe the science. Reverend Williams referred to a book earlier that I absolutely love, Their Own Receive Them Not. But there's so many others out there that gives you a spiritual direction that you can go in that helps open your eyes to how big God is and how much God loves all of God's creation. Peter Gomes, the late theologian at Harvard, wrote a book called The Good Book. And in that book, he dedicates a chapter to human sexuality. And there's just tons of others. Bishop Yvette Flunder wrote a book called Where the Water Gathers. And there's just many, many others. When I was growing up, I had to search out Christian doctrine that allowed me to see myself as positive and loved by God in order to move forward in relationship with God and in ministry. And once I could do that, the sky was the limit. Nothing that anybody else said or thought about me mattered because I came to the understanding that God loved me. And so we continue to have these issues in the church because the leadership, particularly in the Black church, refuse to do the hard work of having these difficult conversations that help us to address the issues people who are suffering within our community.
Let me bring on Michael O'Connor, who's called in. Michael, it's been a long time, but I'm glad to hear your voice.
Hi, good morning, and good morning to your guest, Santita.
Good morning.
It's it's good to hear this conversation. It's good to hear Charles Strait, Reverend Strait. I don't know Reverend Johnson, but this has been a fight that's been going on for a long, long time in churches across America. Specifically, I'm referring to the black churches. I'm from a generation where most black churches, you couldn't be funeralized. As a matter of fact, it was one of the beginnings of why I did a lot of the advocacy that Mark Lovelace, Ben Montgomery, Lisa, a bunch of people in the black community, specifically in the organizations Black, Lesbian, and Gay, when we participated in the Bud Billiken Parade, was because of the fact that people had not been educated. What Reverend Strait was saying is absolutely true. Fellowship was one of the rarities in the black church life here in the city of Chicago. I left the Catholic Church, even though I grew up Catholic, because they said that I was an abomination to God, even though I had never slept or laid with anyone based on their beliefs. Then I found out much later that a lot of their persons were having their own issues in terms of their priests. With that being said, when we're talking about the HIV piece, here in Chicago, there was a lot of problems when they would not, when churches where you went to and paid your dues or your tithes every Sunday, once they found out that a person had, as far as HIV, a number of them were shamed into leaving. They would wind up disappearing, not just from church life, but from social life within the Black LGBTQ community, which mirrored the same process that happened with the white LGBTQ community. The difference was most of the African American community church life, we did not have that support. That's one of the reasons why today the legacy of HIV is prevalent within our community in terms of the numbers that not only is it dealing with the LGBTQ community, but also we have the issue with the fastest growing rate among African American women here in the state of Illinois. And I'd like to give a shout out to State Representative Lamont Robinson for bringing back $15 million specifically as it concerns the African American HIV/AIDS Response Act. Because before the churches, for the most part, Fellowship, Trinity, mega churches, some of them, it wasn't an issue. But most of the churches, we had to pay extra just to be funeralized, our own.
Well,
a lot of our
Michael, we saw that.
We were demons.
Well, we saw that when Keith Barrow passed, and trying to get someone.
Yes, exactly.
Vicky, you remember this? Pastor Vicky, Pastor
Reverend
Charles.
Darrell's son.
Absolutely, you remember that trying to get him number one to get him visited in the hospital, then to get someone who would handle his body, and then to get him funeralized. And then there was but also in that time, because that was October of 1983, there was a lot of hysteria. I think the hysteria was driven by what we did not know about that virus, about HIV, but also, Pastor Strait, it was driven by, a fair amount of homophobia. What can the church do moving forward? I've got about 3 minutes and they belong to you. What can the church do? What can we do? What can we all do? Because we're all the church. what can we do going forward to advance?
Well, I would say that one of the things that has been really, really encouraging to me are preachers like Dr. Howard John Wesley in Maryland, who said that he could not reconcile. He grew up here in Chicago at Lilydale Progressive Baptist Church, and he said he was taught a very conservative theology that did not allow him to see LGBT persons as anything other than sinful. But as he knew LGBT people within his own life and saw the work that they did in church and knew that there was a genuine love and relationship with God, he said those two things just couldn't be reconciled in himself. And so he started to do some work to figure out what it is that was really true if what he was seeing in his life did not come together with what he was taught in his theology. So one of the things I think that we have to do as a people, as the church in particular, is that we have to do that work to reconcile the idea that our sons, our daughters, our preachers, people within our congregations who are leaders, who are also LGBT persons, can be good Christians and be in love with God in the same way as everybody else, and then find new theology, because the old theology does not work with that idea, that framework. And for pastors to dig deep and to say, I've got to look at this differently. There must be a different way. And there is. And so to have people to come to themselves and go to God in prayer and find theology that is reconciled with the people that they know and love, that is what will move the church. Dr. King said that we are caught in an inescapable network of neutrality that's tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. And that is also true about LGBT persons within the church. It is not a them and us thing. It is all of us in this together. And once we can go back to God like we did with slavery and say that those passages in the Bible that tells us to be obedient to our masters could not have been theologically sound with the God of...
You got about a minute.
Like we did with women, when we looked at the Bible and said, those passages that say be obedient to your husband and keep silent in church could not be true. When we look at these great women of God, like the two that you have on this call right now, who have been called and anointed by God, we did the work to say that theology that we were taught is wrong. And so we've got to do the same thing for our LGBT brothers and sisters who are leaving the church in droves.
I got 10 seconds.
To hear from you. And he said he left the Catholic Church, but we have too many people leaving the Black church because they are told that they can't be who they are.
God bless you. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show.
Everywhere, take the time to say.
Well, why don't you go on and preach, Pastor Charles Straits?
That's what you get for waking me up this time of the morning.
I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. I had to have Vicky on here to make you do it. After we're at the party, he's like, "Oh, you know what time my show comes on, or maybe you don't."
No. Really, I was really helped.
Girl,
it really helped relieve. They didn't get up to listen either. That just made me feel so much better.
But she calls me every day to find out how it went. How about that? So stop it. She wants to know, how did it go? How did it go? How did it go? What happened? How did it go? How did it go? My mother's also almost 80, so hush. So, I mean, she's 77 now. Wow. Wow.
She ain't that much older than me. I get a pass too.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
No, you
Not
don't.
yet.
No, you
Not
don't.
yet.
No, you don't. No, you don't. So, hush.
Thank you.
But I love you, Pastor Straight. But we're going to continue to have this conversation. And Pastor Williams, you still there?
I am still here, yes.
You know what? I've got about a minute before I have to switch over, because we're bringing our other guests on. But I wanted you all to engage with each other because I have such love and respect for each of you, and I'm so glad that we were together today. Today, thank you so much for this. Thank you for blessing
Me
this
too.
show and me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much or both of you, for your insight on this subject. Thank you so much.
And thank you for giving us a great lead in after your good news, because the things that you helped to set up the conversation that we had. Yeah, really good.
Oh, you all are the best.
Sorry.
We have Attorney Hoffler on the line.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I love you. I love you, Pastor Ricky. I'll speak with you next week. I'll speak with you next week. And we're going to have to get Charles up real early because he's going to do good news one of these days. And you're going to have to wake him up, Vicky. I know that.
Oh, Lord, have mercy.
Because I don't want him babbling like a brook.
Thank you.
So,
God bless you. Have a great rest of your show.
Rest of your day.
Wait a minute. Before you quickly let everybody know how we can catch you on Sunday, Pastor Straight.
We have Attorney Fancher on the line.
In-person worship on July 4th at the Faith United Methodist Church at 15015 Grant Street at 11 o'clock. And I'm looking forward to it. I hope people will join us there.
Absolutely. Pastor
And that's in
Johnson?
Dalton. That's in Dalton, Illinois.
In Dalton, Illinois. Thank you for helping me.
I was about to say, honey, that's just outside the city, but I'll let it go.
Right.
Pastor Johnson?
At St. Thomas Lutheran Church, worshiping in the courtyard each Sunday at 11:45 until 12:15. If it is rain, then there is no worship in the courtyard, and we can be seen on Facebook Live with a previous service.
Okay. And Pastor Williams, how can we catch you on Sunday?
You can catch us on Sunday on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, First Baptist Church of Bridgehampton, at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Wonderful. I love each of you. Pastor Straight, Pastor Johnson, Pastor Williams. Mwah.
Thank you. Love you too.
Thank you. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Paula Garcini Zipser said, C.K.
Hey, how are you?
That's what she is. She's one of the morning stars. She said, C.K.
Good morning. It is so, I gotta say, it's so wonderful. Whenever I listen to you, Santita, and I listen to your guests, it really makes my day. So thank you for all that you do. It really, today we've got so many crazy things going on. So it's nice to hear a wonderful voice that speaks truth to power and uses, her voice, your voice in the world to bring about, just another dialogue. I'm so tired of hearing all this stuff on TV where people are being inauthentic, are not speaking what they know is truth. It just gets on my last nerve. So good morning. I'm excited.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm excited to talk about what happened, what's happening in your part of the world down in Florida. What is in the water down there, CK?
I don't know. It's some kind of crazy Kool-Aid. I just don't know. It used to be, Georgia's right behind Florida. So, as bad as Florida is, Georgia is right there. It's right there.
I'm like, golly, is Attorney there?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. I was like, they're going to start interviewing because, he's been defunding schools that he feels are too liberal. So
this is just the craziest thing. I don't know if people really realize what is happening. You talk about curtailing and limiting free speech. How about, first of all, what's the big deal? What is the big deal? This is just the most asinine, I think, thing, this little movement that's going on to try to monitor and prevent an honest discussion about the connection, the inextricable connection between law and race. What's the big deal? I don't understand.
Well, clearly it's a big one because they got this. He signed this into law, honey. But
No, it
it's just a very interesting place. You have this Congresswoman Salazar, who says the evils of communism can't be
You got
whitewashed.
45 seconds.
And thank you so much. And you have a lot going on down there. Because my mother's from Florida, so it makes me think a lot about. And my mother's from a family of migrant workers. So when I hear all of this, it kind of makes my flesh crawl because I think of what my grandmother had to live through, what my mother had to endure. I mean, the racism there is just,
Yep.
whew, it's a lot. It is a lot.
I mean, if
5
we're going
seconds.
to crack down on educational, as he calls, indoctrination,
Oh yeah, well that's
if that's what, then that means there should be no education.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. Ooh, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. Call me or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to hear your voices if you text us. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that. Let's talk today. We got a lot to talk about, and I want you to meet my morning stars over on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on this stormy morning in Chicago. The Santita Jackson and Friends. We're also streaming on WCPT and on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe there, everybody. Meet me over on Instagram, Santita Jackson IG, and at Santita J. So, everybody, we're going to be talking about Governor DeSantis from Florida, who wants to fight indoctrination, as he puts it. And for those people who attend and who work at public universities and colleges. They have about 33 down in Florida. They will all be interviewed to find out their political affiliations. What do you think about that? What does that sound like to you? Do I see the brown shirts? What is going on? And then at the bottom of the hour, we're going to have Chapearl. That's right, Chapearl Wells. Her podcast, Somebody, is winning awards all over the place, and they're being nominated for some really, really big awards. They have had more than 1.5 million downloads, and I encourage you to go to The Intercept so that you can hear her story about her son. Well, tonight she's going to be on Dateline. So we want to talk about that tonight with Allison Flowers from the Invisible Institute and Chapearl, so that we can find out where they are with this case. She is doggedly pursuing who killed her son, what happened, and why she's not really gotten a lot of cooperation from the Chicago police. All right, everybody, let's get to some of these headlines. Chicago thunderstorms. Oh my goodness, it knocked out my cable early this morning for a hot second. 80 degrees will be the high. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 88 degrees, partly cloudy. The Dow closed up 322 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 97 points. The S&P 500 closed up 24 points. Well, the Twins fell to Cleveland yesterday, 4-1. The Cubs shut out the Dodgers, 4-0. They're on a roll, everybody. They'll be facing off against the Dodgers once again today. And the Sox will be playing the Mariners. The Clippers, 106. The Suns, 92. We're getting closer and closer and closer, everybody, to a champion. Who's going to be the NBA champion? What is happening down in Florida, everybody? 99 people are missing, at least one person dead. Search and rescue operations are ongoing in Surfside, Florida, and officials are trying to stay hopeful that the missing can be recovered. Nearly 55 of the 136 Champlain Towers South just crumbled. But did they just crumble? And I'm asking that question because there are news reports that say something very different. The Miami building, according to this Daily Mail report, said that that collapsed, killing at least one person, with 99 persons unaccounted for. USA Today reported last year that a professor at at the Department of Earth and Environment at Florida International University did a study on the building and found it unstable. Indeed, he said on Thursday that he knew instantly which building had collapsed when he heard news reports of it. He said, I looked at this morning and I said, oh my God, we did detect that. His study was part of a wider look at how buildings in Miami were sinking generally with rising sea levels caused by climate change. Champlain Tower South was completed in 1981 and has not been updated significantly since then. And in fact, everybody, it hasn't been recertified since 1981 in 41 years. Why is not the news media, the mainstream media, reporting that? They're all walking around there saying, what happened? What happened? Buildings don't just crumble. Not in the United States, not with all the regulations that we have. What happened? We need to find out because it could happen to any of us, and we need to be very, very careful. Indeed, some people were saying that the building was in okay shape. Really? President Biden endorsed the Senate's bipartisan infrastructure agreement. It's $945 billion. That's far short of the $4 billion that he was asking for. And Democrats are saying that perhaps they will construct a reconciliation bill in which they need no Republican support so that they can supplement that. What do you think should happen? What do you think will happen, everybody? Derek Chauvin, the police officer, he was a police officer at the time who murdered George Floyd, will be sentenced today. Will he get 40 years in prison? That's highly doubtful. People are saying that it might be 10 to 15 years. Will that be enough? We're going to talk about that on Monday, everybody. Japan's emperor is voicing concern about the COVID spread during the Olympics. Emperor Naruhito, who ascended the chrysanthemum throne in 2019 from his father, Emperor Akihito, said he shared widespread public concern about the games, which open in a month's time. Indeed, most Japanese overwhelmingly do not want the Olympics to come there. Remember, they are about 10% or less vaccinated, everybody. The rates of hunger among the National Guardsmen and reservists are double the national rate, everybody. They are having a hard time feeding their families. Can you believe it? They report more food insecurity than any other group, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Regardless of household income, education, age, or race, nearly 1 in 5 Guard members report sometimes or often not having enough to eat. And a third of those with a spouse serving in the National Guard or reserves report not having enough to eat. The numbers are even more troubling for the National Guard or reserve families with children. We will be talking about that. How is it that these people who serve us can't get served any food? In the meantime, the top 1% of Americans have about 16 times more wealth than the bottom 50%. Well, guess what? Maybe we need to look at what's happening in France. The workers at a McDonald's in Marseille seized seized the store, seized the McDonald's, and they made it into a food bank. They said, we are a food bank now. Perhaps the National Guard knows something we don't know. They just simulated a cyber attack that brought down utilities nationwide. I guess they want to be prepared. All right, everybody, let us talk about what Governor DeSantis is doing. And I think it's noteworthy for us to talk about Governor DeSantis. Why? Because many people are saying that if President Trump does not run for the presidency again in 2024, that he is the man, according to all of these polls, who has the greatest chance of becoming the Republican nominee. And wow, in the meantime, he has signed into law. Uh, you will now be able to, you're now required, excuse me, to collect the political views of professors and students at the 33 colleges, public colleges, and universities in the state of Florida. Now, some people are saying that according to this Common Dreams report, the headline is It Sounds Like Fascism. What do you think about this, everybody? Call me or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. What does that sound like to you? In fact, he's defunding schools that he is deeming too liberal. I want to hear from you. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world, chair of Rainbow Push, and great civil libertarian from the National Conference of Black Lawyers, attorney Mark Fancher. Let me start with you, Mark, because you're a civil libertarian. What do you make of this?
as a matter of law, this is, in direct conflict with what the Constitution requires. I mean, the First Amendment contemplates, and the body of law that's grown up around it, contemplates that universities in particular are marketplaces of ideas. There has been a long-standing understanding that certainly within the university there is far greater tolerance of diversity of thought and ideas than you might find in other places and in other spaces in the country. But that being said, on some level, I know while everybody is very upset about this, any reasonable people are anyway. From my perspective, there's reason to be encouraged. And the reason is this, that it reflects a rising level of consciousness in the country that is frightening people who traditionally and historically have held power in this country. It's frightening them to death. You have for generations seen in this country the dominance of white supremacy and white power. You've seen corporate power, which has been well entrenched. And that power has been maintained often by force, but in many cases simply by having the vast majority of the population to buy into American mythology. The idea that we live in a democracy, that it is a fair country, it is a just country, that to the extent that there has been discrimination or problems here and there, they're aberrations and that they can be fixed with the system. What has been ignored through a persistent and consistent pattern and practice of propaganda is the absolute corrupt nature of the very foundations of the country. The country has never frankly admitted that it's built on stolen territory, territory that was taken from the indigenous populations. It has never frankly admitted and talked about the fact that those same populations were targeted for genocide. It has never frankly and at length talked about the scope and extent of the horrors of slavery. It really never has. And they have never really talked frankly about the continuing and lingering impact of those things on more recent history and on current times, which is very much what critical race theory and all of those other things talk about, the impact these things had on current situations. And so as long as people were deluded, as long as people were buying the mythology and buying into all of this, everything was fine. You could continue with this illusion of a democratic and open society where people express their ideas because everybody's ideas fit within the box. But with recent developments, most notably the killing of George Floyd, a lot of people's eyes have been opened. People have begun to look critically at this country. They've begun to see the contradictions. And it's not just people from historically oppressed communities who are seeing it. A lot of quote unquote good white youth have also seen it. They have been out there protesting, along with Black Lives Matter and all of the others who have been resisting systemic problems. They've been asking critical questions about capitalism. It is no longer a taboo topic to discuss in younger circles. Younger generations of people accept the idea of socialism as a natural and given thing that people should consider and talk about. These are very frightening developments for people who have relied upon the lies that America has been built on. And so they're really sort of in a panic. They're desperate. They're looking for ways to put the genie back in the bottle, and they can't do it. And so they resort to extreme measures, such as what's happening with DeSantis. So, the more people are conscious, the fiercer the resistance, and the fiercer the resistance, the more we know that we're winning and that the revolution is coming.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler, you lived in Florida for years, practiced in Florida. What do you make of this? Because, Florida has these political extremes, right? And then you have some progressive parts of Florida, but then you have some extreme right-wing elements in Florida that also that bring in the right-wing elements, say from Cuba, those who resisted a revolution that made a society more egalitarian. Whatever you say about Cuba, everybody. Look, my grandmother worked there as a migrant worker 80 plus years ago. And she said, she said to me, whatever you say about Castro, you can say what you want. And she was someone who was very, very conservative in her politics. She said, you can say what you wish. But she said, when I was working there, we were little more than slaves. Now that is no longer the case. And these people who own these plantations and who starve these people out, they're the ones who are in Florida now, CK. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So what is this?
Well, I think what is this? It would be so easy for me to use the term craziness because that is not a term that really, it's not a clinical term. It's not anything that reflects on a medical condition. It's a state of mind of what is happening politically for Governor DeSantis to pass this law. And I want to break it down so people understand really what it means to communities and how it suppresses. I litigated actually a couple of times, but one case to verdict, a free speech case, a First Amendment case. And in Florida, many, many years ago when I was in practice with Willie Gary, we litigated the First Amendment case in Pensacola. So I know a lot about First Amendment issues, free speech, and what it means in a court of law and what you have to prove. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on in this country is that we could speak freely, even if we don't share, someone doesn't share your views, you could speak your truth to power. And that's just part of the American way. And this is what we have been led to believe. Many people came to this country because they were prosecuted, they were persecuted in their countries for speaking out, for free speech. And say what you will, I don't even take a position in this moment about Cuba and Castro. People can say what they will. But what DeSantis is doing is exactly what people in South Florida accuse Fidel Castro of doing. They said Fidel Castro was an authoritarian, that he imposed all of these rules and limited freedom of speech and wouldn't allow people to do anything. That's what the allegations were. One of them, sets of allegations relative to freedom of speech. That was one of the greatest criticisms that we heard, and as I lived in Florida, about Fidel Castro and Cuba. And yet here we have the governor of the state of Florida that has the largest population of Cuban immigrants in this country that is doing exactly what he and people accused Fidel Castro of doing.
But hold on, CK,
and I'm not saying he did that.
No. But if I can interrupt you here, this is what they did in Cuba. That's my only point. Because Representative Salazar, who is a child of Cuban immigrants, said that it's good that DeSantis is doing this because he's wiping out communism. I was like, communism? So, I mean, because you remember Dr. King was called a communist, right? I mean, anytime you start.
And everybody that was progressive. Anyone was progressive. And many people died because they were called communists. They were blackballed, whether in the entertainment industry, in the civil rights community, and we understand what that label is. We understand what it means. And it's very unfortunate. What I'm saying is there's hypocrisy everywhere. Because the things that they're alleging that Castro did, this is exactly what it is. But more importantly, let's just break it down in terms of the communities, our communities, and the African-American community in particular. They're going to be banning, and imagine this, screening in public schools, because it's not just the public universities where he's imposing this limit on freedom of speech. Imagine if you're a professor and you teach progressive views, or how about you just teach African-American studies? How about that? You teach Latino studies. You teach studies about Native American communities. That means you're going to have to submit your curriculum. You're going to have to submit data, that where people can screen out to make sure you are not being too progressive. And by the way, not just reporting history. That's the damage in a university context where we are molding the minds of young people. In college, it should be a free environment, not a restrictive, limited environment. That's where you really learn how to think. But it doesn't just stop in college. He's going back to high schools, public schools, where mostly our black and brown children are in Florida. He's banning educators from teaching critical race theory, which basically is just nothing more than an analysis of racism in this country and how there are systematic or systemic measures that you can look at in terms of racism in this country. It's not a propaganda machine. It's teaching history. So I guess they really can't talk about slavery, because if you're going to talk about the link between the law and racism in this country, you're talking by definition about slavery. So I suppose now in public schools in Florida, you can't talk about slavery. So we need to be very, very, very careful and see and analyze and remember how this can evolve. And when it happens in Florida, it's coming to Georgia. It's going to spread throughout the South, and it's going all throughout the country. And this is yet another way of suppressing people whose history is troubled in this country. Mm-hmm. Because how about Native Americans? So does that mean that we can't talk about how racism and culturalism, racism resulted in us stealing the lands of Native Americans? I mean, can we not talk about that? Can we not talk about the history of this country? I mean, this is just history. So we can't discuss that. So that's going to be limited. So that means that we're going to go back to just the Pilgrims. We're going to go back to people who came over here, and we're going to go back to talking about history in a very, very slanted way. That means that all those books and the years and years of fight that educators have made to make sure that there's diversity in the curriculum, diversity in the reading, diversity in discussion, all that's going to be snipped out.
But CK, very quickly, because I've got about a minute left. I'm wondering who's going to get fired from their jobs. What professors are going to lose their jobs? What teachers are going to lose their jobs? What kids are going to be kicked out of school? What task forces will be put in place? What committees are going to be put in place to screen people?
Well, I can tell you now.
I've got 20 seconds.
African American studies, Black students, Black and brown students, and people who are teaching African American studies or anything progressive. Those are the people who are going to lose their jobs and be kicked out.
Wow, and progressive white politics. 20 seconds for you, Mark Fancher.
1 minute.
Your thoughts?
Well, I'm not. I think that if they do all of those things, it'll be like throwing gasoline on a fire. And I'm excited by the prospect. I mean, this is the time for civil disobedience. They want to prohibit this sort of thing. People should just go on teaching it anyway, boldly and without apologies, and it will just heighten the contradictions. People will want to know what's so terrible about what these people are teaching, and it will allow a platform for the further exposition
30 seconds.
Dangerous ideas, which can only help people become more enlightened. I say bring it on.
I say bring it on. Bishop William Barber, among others, were arrested this week. And Reverend said, this is not an insurrection, this is a resurrection. So go for it, everybody. Let's talk with Chappelle Wells about her appearance on Dateline tonight, supporting her podcast, talking about the murder of her son. Back in just a few minutes on the Santita Jackson Show. Am I out?
Yeah, you're out.
Okay, always tell me that I'm out, okay?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, very good. Okay, so let me say goodbye to Attorney Fancher and to Attorney Hoffler so we can bring on these other two guests. Attorney Fancher and Hoffler, thank you so much.
No, thank you, and have a great weekend.
Hey, you have a great weekend.
Okay.
I'm going to get a couple hours. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
All right. Take care.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody. Send Chappelle some love. She's about to come on right now with Allison Flowers. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. Okay, is anybody up? Hello, hello.
We have Miss Flowers on the line.
Okay, very good. Allison Flowers, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
It's great hearing your voice.
Same.
Great hearing your voice. Great hearing your voice. Exciting work that you all have been doing.
I know. What a year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, and you deserve it all because it was just excellent. It is excellent, 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 excellent. Oh boy. Okay, excuse me. Okay, I'm trying. That I'm now done with. I'm trying to move them off to the side.
Did you receive the emails I sent you? Our press release, our list of our top awards, and then the Dateline or People Magazine is featuring the Dateline show. I sent you that as well.
Okay. Well, you know what? I did
We have
not.
Miss Wells on the line.
Okay, I didn't see that, but you know what? I'll give you the space to say that. Okay. Okay. Because I
30
just
seconds.
got backlogged. Thank you so much, and just remember to let me know that we are. Chaparral, you're up.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Great hearing your voice.
Thank you, Santita.
Okay, no, thank you. Okay. Got that.
15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Call me, text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Dave from San Francisco. You know, we're talking about this podcast and Dateline. One of our own is going to be on Dateline tonight. And Dave, I'm going to get to you toward the end of the broadcast if you can hold on for me. But let me speak to you about your Pearl Wells. Indeed, we're always fired up and informed by the things that she says, but you never know what someone's backstory is. She's the mother of many children now, and she's a married woman. She's a church-going woman, and she's raised all of these children to maturity, and they've all done very, very well. So you can imagine uh, the horror and even the pain that she lives with every day because her baby is no longer with her. March of 2016, her 22-year-old son, Courtney Copeland, after whom her foundation is named, uh, wound up with a bullet in his back, and no one knows who did it. It happened in front of the police station, and we just want to know how, why, what, who, where. Can't find it out. Of course, the cameras were down. So she said, I'm going to turn my pain into power. And she joined forces with the Invisible Institute, and they have come up with a podcast that has been one of the most listened to podcasts in the United States today. And I urge you to listen to somebody. To somebody. It's the 2020 IDA Documentary Award for Best Audio Documentary. They've won the Third Coast International Festival Award. They've been a Pulitzer Prize finalist in the audio reporting category, National Magazine Award from Ellie, the Scripps Howard Award for Excellence in Radio Podcast Reporting. I mean, it just keeps the awards keep on coming because it is really an incredible audio documentary, and they also have supplemental learning materials. I welcome to the show, of course, Chaparral Wells, our own. Of course, she is the founder of the Courtney Copeland Foundation, and which she assists young people as her son would have her do. And Allison Flowers of the Invisible Institute, one of our nation's premier investigative reporters. Thank you so much for being with us today, both of you. Chapearl,
Yes.
somebody,
so
you
much
all
for
gonna,
having me.
oh, of course. Well, tonight you all going to be on Dateline. They're going to be telling your story. Please tell us about that.
Well, I was actually approached via Facebook from one of the Dateline representatives to do my story. So I was like shocked because I couldn't believe that they were reaching out to me. And so this has been probably a little bit close to a year in the making of getting this episode done because of coronavirus. It actually delayed a lot of the filming, but we got it done. And one of the things that they want to highlight is the murder solve rate in Chicago. One of the things that we noticed in investigating Courtney's case is that over half of murder victims that are Black, they do not get justice. And so we have highlighted that in the podcast of Somebody, as well as also the indifference that police have when it comes to Black and brown people.
Most of the murder cases in this city are not solved.
Correct.
So, what did Dateline want to know? I mean, that is a matter of public record. Why? What did they want you to say? Is it because you documented every interaction that you've had with everyone in relation to what happened to Courtney? Is it because you documented everything so heavily? What was it?
I think that was a point, but they also wanted to look at how murders are solved, not only in Chicago, but across the nation. One of the things that we found in our investigation with Courtney's case is that they literally did not do anything on his case.
What do you, whoa, no. What do you mean they literally did not do anything on his case?
Just basic stuff, what you would think that would be basic, like interviewing potential witnesses, interviewing his friends and family that would have known his whereabouts. These basic detective skills that you think that they would have went forth with, they did not do. They did a very, the actual investigation of Courtney's murder was very thin. What I actually noticed is that it was more copy and paste. So whoever went into his file, whoever the initial report is, all they did was copy and paste under a different or a different police officer, but it was the same exact information. So the file looked thick based on the number of people who were actually going into the file, but the content was very thin. It was nothing. I mean, when I went through his report, it was the night of the incident, which was a basic, shallow investigation. The next report was the ballistic reports, and they did very short interviews and no follow-up with people who could have helped solve his murder.
Allison Flowers, I mean, you're the director of investigations at the Invisible Institute, and sending much love to Jamie Calvin. We just love the work that he's done. Indeed, it is their work that got us. They doggedly pursued the Laquan McDonald tapes. That is why we have them today, because they were like pit bulls, wouldn't let it go. And you produced this podcast. What was compelling about this story to you? Because most of the murders in Chicago are not solved. So we have a lot of Chapearl Wells, and let us not forget her husband, Brent. I mean, this is a family that this happened to. I don't want anyone to forget, Courtney Copeland had a mother and a father. We're very accustomed to looking at the mom, but her husband lost his son too. Her daughters lost their brother. It's important for us to remember that. He was connected to people who loved him. He was connected to his church. He was connected to his community, to his aunts, to his uncles, to his cousins. That's important for us to remember. This didn't just happen to one person. Allison Flowers, what about this story was compelling to you?
Yes, it's so good to be back here, because in many ways it started here. I know Chapearl called you the very first night, seeking guidance, and that was a really powerful moment in the podcast as well. So, what was so compelling about this case was, of course, Chapearl herself. When she came to us, it was already a year into her own investigation. So, this happens to so many families with, 5,000 murders in Chicago over the last decade. Police have only arrested a suspect in fewer than a third. And for Black victims, their homicide solve rate is about half the rate as white victims. So this is affecting a lot of people, not just their loved ones being taken from them, but also the police really deprioritizing their cases. But what was so compelling about Chaparral wasn't the fact that her son was gone. That happens to too many people. But it was actually the fact that she had started investigating this case herself from almost the very moment it happened. She was at the hospital. The detectives asked her if he was the owner of the car he was driving, right? Which seems to be a question that is very suggestive as to whether or not Courtney had stolen the car. And at that point, Chaparral didn't know that he had come in handcuffs. That came later, and that came soon because she pulled records. This is the work of a skilled investigator and a journalist. That's what you do, is you start pulling records, you put together your paper trail, you start interviewing people. And, the police, in the end, documented interviews with a handful of people, the person Courtney was going to see, and that was about a couple-minute exchange, and didn't probe or ask her if she heard anything, which she did. She did hear gunshots, and her roommate heard gunshots. The police never knew that because they had a very surface-level conversation with her. They interviewed Chaparral and Brent, but of course they weren't witnesses. They were just family members, and so that's a matter of course in police work is to talk to the family. But they, that was included in the people that they interviewed. And that was basically it, one more person, but that was in a supplemental report. And, the Invisible Institute, along with Chaparral, we filed 80 public records requests, actually more than 80. I think it was 86. And we had to appeal some of those when we got shut down for seeking that public information about the case, including the video. And so we did obtain the video of Courtney outside the station ultimately. A lot of the pod cameras were down, but there were a few that worked. And, when Chaparral initially asked for that police video of Courtney's encounter, she was denied, but then they're wanting her to trust them as they move forward with solving the case. I mean, how can she trust them when they won't tell her the names of the officers on scene, which is also a matter of public record? They won't give her the video of Courtney outside the station with the police officers, which was also a matter of public record. And together we uncovered dispatch that the police had filed as unrelated to the case, but surfaced really important information on potential suspects. Chaparral knocked on every door on the street where Courtney was shot, and we did that again. And several neighbors confirmed that the police had never contacted them, who had lived there for years. We ended up tracking down 5 witnesses whom police had never connected to the case, although it's arguable they should have known about these people. They just never followed up with these people. And then we identified compelling suspects and conducted a double-blind photo lineup. Again, a step that was not taken by the police. We dismantled Courtney's car. I think that's a big one. The police did not properly process the car, which is where the shooting happened. And we consulted with a forensic firearms expert. We took his car apart in very bright lighting under, lab-like conditions, which should have been done. And we did, even 2 years later, find a kernel of gunpowder that the police, had it been processed earlier, might have been useful to them. But what we found was not substantial enough to lead us in any direction there. But it just shows you what could have been if the police had looked into this more thoroughly, if they had cared more about Courtney's life.
Allison Flowers, Director of Investigations at the Invisible Institute. Allison, should you join the police force, or if you...
No, thank you. No, thank you. And that's the other thing is, what is the role of policing in all of this, right? Yeah. I mean, what are we looking for? We're lamenting the fact that they're not solving cases at a rate that we would want in society, right? And then on the other side of this, while, this was not a police shooting, right, like Laquan McDonald, they handcuffed him as he was dying. He didn't leave the scene for 13 minutes after he got there. He was not the person that the police threw in the back of their squad car and raced to the hospital, as we have recently seen, which is called a scoop and run, and it saves lives. In Philadelphia, they do that 2/3 of the time. Gunshot wound victims are taken in by Philadelphia police, and it's saving lives there. And that is something that any Chicago police officer can do. It's cultural. It is allowed by policy, but it's not a cultural practice among the police here in Chicago. And so it's just kind of as we hear these conversations about redirecting resources that go to the police, these colossal resources that go to police to prop up the system of policing in Chicago, you just have to really look hard at the numbers. And is the quality there? Are they really delivering on the things that people really want them to do? And, it's very apparent that they're not good at the things that we want them here for.
Allison,
so I think people really need to start thinking about that.
Allison, not to interrupt, excuse me, which is, of course, what I just did. I apologize for that. But you said something that struck me. They're not good at it. Are they not good at it, or are they purposefully ignoring these cases?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I wish.
You know what? Let me say this, because there are some wonderful, excellent police who go onto the force with all these hopes and dreams of serving and protecting. That is still true, everybody. And then they get in the system and they're like, this is such a mess. What can I do? And when I try to do something, I get pushback. And then my family can be harassed. I can lose my job. All kinds of things happen. Let's just get real about this. So I'm trying to figure out what's the holdup here, because they wouldn't want that to happen. And in fact, they would not let that happen to one of their own, Allison Flowers.
Right. We've certainly seen that with Officer Bauer and their attempts to save his life. They immediately leapt into action for him, and
we saw that with Dante Wright up in Minnesota. They have surrounded that police officer's home who killed this boy.
Right.
This is what they do.
Yeah. I interviewed a police officer yesterday for an upcoming podcast relaunch event that we're having with the Intercept, our co-production partner. It's next Wednesday, I believe, the 30th. And it'll be at 5 p.m. Central, a virtual event. People can stream and hear me and Chappelle in conversation talking about this last year and everything. But we do have I guess not so surprise guest, I'm telling you all here. But we do have I won't say who he is, but we do have a police officer who will be talking to us about a scoop and run and taking a kid to the hospital recently. There are officers who are, I'll say, sort of trapped in the belly of the whale right now. Mm-hmm. Of course, good and principled people existing in a system that is really failing and has, even at times when you could say that it was not working for all of the citizenry, mm-hmm. and wasn't really designed to. You look at the origins of policing in Chicago, it was really about controlling the Black population and protecting the white population. And then you get into the South, and that was, straight up slave patrol. So that is how policing developed in this country. And we can say that there are aspects of it that are important today that do make people feel safe. But so many people do not feel safe because of the police. And so often the police themselves are a threat to public safety. And, the solve rate speaks for itself. And, to the extent that police are preventing crime, I think anyone in Chicago would say it certainly doesn't feel that way either. So I'm just sort of putting the question out there that we do need to think about this. It's not about individual actors. It's about a system that isn't working.
Well, maybe it's working too well, because this was not about protecting white people. They got protection. Black people needed protecting,
right.
From them. The fact is,
exactly.
they gave white people license to do whatever they wanted to do. It's a terrible thing. What are your thoughts now, and everyone tonight? Pearl's story and Allison's story. Allison is the producer, one of the producers of this podcast, that's winning awards all over the place, as well they ought. Um, a director of investigations at the Invisible Institute, but you gave them a lot to go off of, Chaparral, because you took copious notes. You became the lead investigator. You did not wait for the police. You went and started investigating yourself. What time will we see this tonight on Dateline?
It will be on tonight at 9 Central, 10 Eastern on Channel 5 or NBC station in your area. So we are asking everyone to definitely tune in to watch this compelling episode of Somebody. This is one of the things that I wanted to point out, Santita, is that, you know, the Invisible Institute, the Intercept, everyone who partnered with me have been fiercely backing me in this project to get the word out about what happened to Courtney. One of the things as a mom that I carry with me every day is that when all of this happened to Courtney, he was by himself. And now I'm only praying that in heaven he sees that the world is behind him, trying to get answers for him, still fighting for him. I say it all the time, Santita, I will fight until my last breath, you know, to get justice for Courtney because he deserved it. I know what type of child I raised. I know that he should not be where he is right now. But for some reason, God sent me on this journey. And so I try to, if I can't do anything, I can't save Courtney, I can't bring Courtney back. But if I can prevent any more Courtneys from happening, if I can try to get police to treat Black people as human and not as inhumane as they treated my son, then all of this would be worth it.
Why did you name the podcast Somebody?
Well, you can take that, Chaparral. It was very much inspired by your father.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Chaparral?
Yes. We were listening to Reverend Jackson's I Am Somebody and how, you know, and we said in the podcast, how they taught us as Black people to say it because the world always told us that we weren't. And so these were one of the highlights. And we were trying to figure out what can we name it to make it symbolize not only for Courtney, but for Black Americans in general. And to actually put, like I said, that human face on what has happened to us over the years throughout this country.
Allison,
so,
what is
Reverend Jackson, we thank you.
Well, you know, I mean, Allison, I mean, Somebody means what to you as the name of the podcast?
Well, you know, we actually did kick around a lot of different names, and I think what we wanted to represent was, you know, when we stumbled upon the Reverend Jackson's I Am Somebody, and then kind of looked into the usage of that by Martin Luther King as well, and how he borrowed from that from a poem. It just seems sort of like part of this long tradition of Black citizens calling out and saying, you know, regard us, right? Don't disregard our lives. And that is now taking a different form today, people saying Black Lives Matter, but it all goes back to this fundamental principle of not being seen as human, right? As being seen as 3/5, but not fully there. And I think that's what we wanted to really amp up, is that Courtney was somebody. To the police, he may have just been a guy in a nice car who pulled up to the station. Maybe they knew he was shot. Maybe they didn't know he was shot. He said, I've been shot. And he collapsed. But because there wasn't blood, you know, coming out of him, the forensic expert we spoke to said, well, maybe they didn't think he was shot. Maybe they thought he, you know. And so we can speculate, but ultimately they handcuffed him while he was dying. You know, he was laying there and he was on the scene. Even when he was in the ambulance, they still didn't leave the scene for several minutes. They're not rushing to save his life. And I know, and you all know, that if it had been me, if I had pulled up, I'm a white woman, probably very apparent, but if I had pulled up and flagged down an officer for help, I probably would still be here today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Courtney's life mattered. Every second mattered. He was somebody.
What time again will we see this tonight? You know, I believe in repeating, Allison. What time?
Yes. Tonight in Chicago, you can watch at 9 p.m. on Dateline NBC. I think for most that should be Channel 5.
Mm-hmm.
And, it'll be a really powerful episode. They were really thorough with me and Chaparral in using the reporting that we gathered and building upon that for their own story. And so we're excited to finally see this out in the world and for it to bring a larger audience to the podcast, but more importantly, attention to Courtney's case. You know, we furnished the detectives with all of these leads, with all of our findings, with all of the evidence that we gathered, and they've never followed up with Chaparral. We met with them after we were nearing the conclusion of our investigation, about two and a half years now, something like that. Mm-hmm. And they still haven't followed up with the witnesses we identified. And so, it's extremely disappointing, but we are hoping that this will build more pressure in the case for it to finally be solved.
Chaparral, the final minute belongs to you.
Thank you so much, Santita, for having us here today to bring this news about the Dateline as well as also the award shows. But most importantly, I want everyone to know that we are still fighting for justice for Courtney. We have not received it. And we are still hoping that more information is going to be coming forth. We are right now with the Inspector General's office in the city of Chicago. We're hoping that report comes out soon and they bring us some good news, because we know that there are some things that we still do not know about this case. And so that's why we're trying to open and knock down and kick down every door until we find justice for Courtney. And you can follow us at Justice for Courtney Copeland on Facebook as well as also
30 seconds.
Memorial Foundation.
And how can we see the podcast? How can we hear the podcast? Very quickly.
Yes. Download somebody on any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify.
15 seconds.
You don't want to miss it. Love you. Tonight, we will all be watching at 9 o'clock Central Time, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And, Carol and Bab, everybody out on the left coast, Michael Ann, call her. You don't want to miss this tonight, everybody. I love you. God bless you. Have a great weekend. See you on Sunday on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. God bless.
Yes, we can.
Allison and Chaparral.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You've been such a welcoming presence.
Hey, Santita, Dave dropped.
In so many ways. And, I appreciate you always using your platform to help.
Oh, of course. Of course. I mean, that's what the platform is for, right?
Exactly.
That is what it is for. That is why we have this show. At least that's why I think I've got it. So I feel very, very blessed to be able to help, and I will help Chaparral in any and every way I can, because she is my dear sister, friend, beloved. And thank you. I'm sorry, babe. I didn't hear you.
I said thank you so much, Santita. I appreciate all your help.
Oh, hey, you're very welcome. No thanks are necessary. But thank you, Allison. Thank you for all that you do and all that you have done, because your dogged investigation has it means so much. I mean, I thank God for you and the Invisible Institute and all that you all have been doing. Thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. There's definitely always more to come from us.
Oh, I know. I mean, we're still on Facebook Live right now. Is there anything we should be looking out for from the Invisible Institute? You want to give us a little scooperoni?
Well, Yeah, I would like to congratulate my colleagues who won a Pulitzer just a couple weeks ago in national reporting for a series they did on police dog bites. And, they partnered with USA Today, the Marshall Project, and other partners for that really big series. And it won a Pulitzer. And this is just an amazing moment for the Invisible Institute to win a Pulitzer, to have that recognition, and then also for our podcast to be a finalist. It was such a big day for us. And I'll say, in terms of impact around what we've been doing, the Inspector General's office did open an investigation into the Copeland case. And so they've been at it for a while. We're sort of waiting to see what happens in great anticipation here, but we're really looking forward to seeing what that surfaces. And we're hoping for some pretty big findings and maybe some policy changes around what happened to Courtney and how it can help others in the future.
That is fantastic. I love it. I love it. Chaparral, do you have anything else you want to say? You always have a lot to say.
Yes, Santita, I wanted to just say, like I said, I just keep thanking everyone for all the support. We've gotten tons and tons of Facebook messages that I'm trying to actually get back to
Right now, as we speak.
Appreciate all the love. I appreciate all the love. It's going to be an emotional night, even viewing it on me. We have to get to these moments. We have to pay in order to get to the other side. And so CK always says the struggle continues, but victory is certain.
But let me ask you this.
In my head for a long time, Santita.
Yeah, but what are you doing? And I think that this will be helpful to the audience. Are you getting any therapy, any help, any emotional and spiritual support? I know you get spiritual support from your church, but are you talking to anyone? Because, you are having to relive this every time we talk about this.
Yes, Santita, I actually do get therapy. I have a female therapist. Her name is Chantel Bidding, outside of in Oak Lawn, and she is just a fabulous person, and she helps me to unpack all of this that has happened to me.
Okay.
And she helps me to keep grounded. I went through a lot just trying to actually get through the loss of my son. And you never get over it. But what you do is you learn to cope with it and grow from it. Ironically, you're growing from the pain that you have, and you learn to help others. I mean, I have been a help to a lot of people because of what I've gone through. And I just try to diligently try to be of service any way I can.
Well, you know what? Yeah, I know that you have been, and you certainly have been an inspiration to all of us. And I want to thank you for all that you are and do. Thank you, Allison, for all that you are and do, because your work is so important. And how's that baby, Allison?
I'm actually loading them into the car right now to head to school. But, he's maybe not a baby anymore. He's 16 months, and the older one is now almost 5.
It's unbelievable.
It was a busy year putting out the podcast with these 2 kiddos at home. And, our littlest one had to have surgery and all of that. So that neurosurgery is never easy. But, we did get through it, and we had some supportive family and friends and a community here in Chicago. So, we're just grateful because of the amazing hospitals and resources that we have here.
Well,
the best. So
I hear the baby right now, which means all is well.
Wonderful. He's great.
Oh, bless your heart. Well, I had the pleasure of meeting you through these pregnancies, and I'm just thanking God that all is well. Absolutely. That the children help you to mark time. I'm like, 5? What? When did that happen?
I know. Well, I had just returned from parental leave when I met Chaparral, so now he's almost 5. And it really kind of gives us the timestamp of how long we've known each other when I just have to think of my oldest son's age. So.
Oh yeah, that's when I connected with you. You were pregnant the first time. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like what? But you know what? This is a blessing. And everybody tonight, Dateline at 9 o'clock Central Standard Time, but 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And everybody on the left coast, check it out. You don't want to miss this, and you want to let people know. Um, you want to let people know what you think about this podcast. Of course, download it anywhere you can get a podcast. Go get somebody, and look at Dateline tonight. It's compelling, and send some prayers up to Chaparral and her husband and their children, Mr. and Mrs. Brent Wells, and their children, all of them, because they'll need your prayers tonight. And we are with you, Chaparral.
Thank you so much, Santita. I appreciate it.
Sending you much love, and sending you much love, and the babies, Allison. God bless you. Everybody, I'll see you on Keep Hope Alive on Sunday, of course, from 7 to 9 Central Standard Time. We'll be streaming on this platform and on the Reverend Jesse Jackson Senior platform, and. It'll be so good to be with you, and hope to see you tonight. Let's check out Dateline and their review and their overview of the Courtney Copeland case, uh, inspired by the Somebody podcast. I love you, everybody. Hey, Lorraine. Hey, Jewel. Hey, Betty. Hey, Janae. Thank you so much for being with us today. And L. Stanley Davis and Michael Ann. Hey, I reached out to you, Michael Ann. Excuse me, and on and on and on, Paula. And sending you all much love today. Bab. Hey, hey, hey. Miss you already. Nina, D. Ray, Latoya, Monique, Effie, Effie, Effie. I love you, everybody. See you on Sunday. God bless. And tonight, let's look at Dateline as they talk about somebody. At somebody's Courtney Copeland. Courtney Copeland. I love you, everybody. Have a wonderful one.